I'm Dan Gwynn with FrancisSchaefferStudies.org, and I'm here with Sylvester Jacobs. I'm very excited to meet you, sir. I've read your book, Born Black, and seen your portrait of a shelter booklet, and I have that as well. And I love your photography, but I love your story. And we just wanted to sit down with you and just hear from you a little bit about your life at L'Abri and how things started. If you could first tell us about that first meeting with Francis Schaeffer.
With Francis Schaeffer. Well, I was in England at the time, and I was with Operation Mobilization. And anyway, prior to that, I'd already left America. I'd been in Moody even, right, for about a year, and I met some guys that were with Operation Mobilization. And I said, and I really only trusted them because they came to live in our neighborhood because we were living in Chicago, and I had an aunt, and relatives that lived on the south side of Chicago. They were, in the ghetto, all right?
Yeah.
You got these two white guys, they're living in the ghetto, and they sleep at night in a place where I didn't want to walk in the daytime. And I thought, I could trust these guys. Anyway, so they're walking through the neighborhood. We didn't.
Now, this is...
this was in Chicago.
And what year are we talking about?
Oh my goodness. It could have been 68, could have been 67.
So we're in the 60s and the height of all the turmoil.
Yeah, Martin Luther King was still alive because I'd also marched, whatever the rally was in Chicago. I'd been with them there, and we'd marched in that together, all right? And one of these guys by the name of Billy Bray, the other Steve Isham, the great-grandson of Billy Bray, the revivalist, right, in England. And anyway, I came to Europe with them through Operation Mobilization. What they didn't know was that I had a one-way ticket.
Wow.
And, after Moody and some of the other places, and I thought, I've had enough of this. You may not know it, but there, in those days, it wasn't too nice being black, right?
Yeah.
You may have heard.
And what was it that was really, the specifics of what was going on with you in that time?
Hey, this is civil rights time. It was horrible. It just wasn't cool being black. And I thought, I've had enough of this. I'm with the Christians, and I've been here to this place that was like a kind of West Point of Christianity.
But you were seeing no real mercy from Christians.
Mercy.
Yeah.
So love would have been good, but there was no mercy, no love. And I met these guys, and Steve was from Australia. He's probably still Australian. Anyway, I'd had enough. I'd come to the end. I'd been in the military. I'd been 3 years. This is during the Vietnam era, right? And I thought, this is it. If there is no God, let's eat, drink, and be merry. I also thought, let's go see if there is a God. Let's get out of here. And I never thought of leaving home, leaving my family. It's like, it was unheard of. We're black folk, what's wrong with you? And so I just sold all my stuff. I worked during the summer, had money left over from the military, packed my bags and took off, really. And so I get to Europe. While I'm there, we're at there was a conference at OM, and Dr. Schaeffer came to speak. And there are lots of interesting bits that happen around it. But anyway, he was speaking, and he said something. I'm sitting at the back. All the intellectuals are at the front. And then later, there was this little circle, and he's talking to these guys. I'm doing my Nicodemus bit, kind of hiding, hanging around.
Yeah.
And afterwards, the guy comes straight to me, and he wants to talk to me.
You were up in a tree?
No, but I was hanging off of that circle. I did not stay on that circle.
Didn't want to get in there.
No, not at all, because... earlier in high school, I'd been in a similar circle, when the Quaker Oats man had come to speak, and he was so rude, so rude. You can't print this, can you? Anyway, he was really rude. He's telling all, the place was full, black folk, and kids, and the school photographer was trying to take pictures, and he tells him off right there in front of all of us.
Wow.
So awful. And then he'd come to our classroom. And so there's a little circle of folk, and I was trying to ask a question. He's in there. He stopped, turned, looked at me. Everybody else did. He just turned around, carried on talking, like I wasn't there. So when I meet Dr. Schaeffer and he's talking to the intellectuals. I'm doing my Nicodemus bit, but this time I keep my mouth shut. But that guy came right over to me afterwards and wanted to talk to me. I'm trying to back up, the wall's back there, you can't back up too far now. And he's still talking to me and invites me to come over to Le Brie in Switzerland. Oh, by the way, we were in Belgium when this is going on.
So, I mean, what was your first impression of Schaeffer walking up to you and kind of singling you out?
Well, the other guys had left. He'd already spoken with the intellectuals, and I don't know what he wanted. He's a white American. He's wearing these strange clothes. They came over to say hello.
The knickers?
Yeah, the knickerbockers or whatever you call them. And I thought, all right, well, I could go and see. He'd said something about, if he hadn't been doing what he was doing, doing his talk, that he would be working with, young black kids in the States. I thought, okay, well, let's see.
Well, because, whenever he was at Hampton, Sydney, he had found a church congregation there. This was before he went to Westminster Theological Seminary. But he had actually found a congregation there and started working with kids at least then. And we know
I'm assuming that's a black church you're talking about.
Yeah, right? And then obviously he had a love for kids. We know that from Children for Christ. So.
Right. And I say, okay, let's see what he was really like. If I go over there. Mm-hmm. So I went over to Switzerland. And they were full of hospitality. Right. I never had food like that.
Really?
All kinds of interesting things. They brought this. I forget what we had now, but anyway, they brought this out and they asked if you'd like any more. It was soup, because we were traveling through in the middle of the night. And I said, oh, yes, please. And then they brought some more. I said, oh, thank you very much.
And who was serving you that night? Was that?
Mrs. Schaeffer.
Mrs. Schaeffer,
Yeah, and then they brought on the main course.
Yeah. So she fed you well right off.
Yeah, we thought we'd eaten the main course.
No, she's like, no, I got that.
But anyway. Yeah, so that was our intro there. But when I came, I decided to come and stay because they seemed full of hospitality.
I recall a place in your book that you talk about where you go there to stay and there's some girl that's making your bed and you're just kind of blown away.
No, she wants to make my bed.
She wants to make your bed.
I'm sitting on the bed talking with some other guys, wondering who they are. They sounded really fascinating. And actually, while these guys were talking, one was Ray Bruce, the other was David Reese, right? Who's dead now. And these guys were talking, and I was so fascinated. And I'm sitting under my bed crying because I was sure, just crying my eyes out because all I knew is they were speaking English, but I didn't have a clue what they were saying, right? And I'm thinking, what on earth am I doing in this place?
Oh, wow.
But anyway, this girl comes in with sheets to make my bed. Hey, I was a military man, all right? And I come from macho country. Now what do I want some woman making my bed for? Right? She'd come in there. So I'll have the sheets. Actually, it's my wife now. Mm-hmm. That's who it was.
Yeah.
Okay, but I didn't know it at the time, that's who she was going to be. But I said, no. She said, you can leave the sheets there. She said, no, it's just... And
now
we
she
argued.
does that all the time.
Yeah, now we still argue, but I still make the bed.
Oh, you still make the bed. Okay.
Yeah.
You talk about the hospitality. It helped you in that setting to kind of open up a little bit. And one thing that I really recall is from reading that is you were sitting at the table and Os Guinness kind of blurts out this idea. Like, I think you really ought to pursue this photography thing or something like that. Can you explain what that was like?
I think you remember more about that than I do.
Maybe.
Right?
I don't know. It's been a lot of years, huh?
Do the photography. Well, if we were talking about photography, that was more at the end of my stay because I was there almost a year. And because I was thinking of photography, because if this God is really big enough and he's who he says he is, I don't know. I've been around Christians, they're talking science, they're talking this, if I could prove God, you could do this. So now, wait a minute. It says God should be able to speak my language, and I'm a visual. And I should be able to understand and be able to pursue my questions that way. Mm-hmm. And that's what I want to do. And let's go find out, how possible that is. Wow. And I already had a hero, which was Katja Bresson.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
Not knowing that he was as famous or who he was.
Yeah.
And then later we came to meet him and to know, and then, because we talked a lot about that with Rookmacher also. But these guys pushed me, and encouraged me, because it took a long time for me to get sorted out, because there were several times I thought, I'm going to leave. And I went to see Dr. Schaeffer, and he says, come walk with me. And we were walking, and we talked, and we talked, and we talked, until I was calm, because I was telling him I was leaving. All right? Ask me where I was going, and I'll tell you. I have no idea. But I was leaving. I knew I was going to try to get to Israel. I didn't know if I would be alive, what would happen, but we'd do something, to try and get there. And anyway, he persuaded me to stay. He says, just stay and ask your question. Because now I had no money. Because when I initially came, Operation Mobilization was picking up the tab. But they couldn't have done it more in about a month or so. And Labrie at that point said, stay as our guest. Right?
Okay.
I can't remember ever asking them for money, and yet they had supported me.
Really?
That was fascinating. Yeah. They asked questions, whatever. And I met Jerem there. Obviously I met Janet, but I'd met a number of people there.
Yeah.
All right? They were just really helpful in shifting my life. But the thing that was the most impressive, as far as my own life was concerned, was the way they cared for me. Mm-hmm. Right? And to use a very, anti-political term, like they loved me, they really cared. And I was so impressed with that. There was community people, yeah. And they had promised honest answers to honest questions. Yeah. And at that point I'd say they lied. You laugh. This is very serious.
Serious. So you said they lied.
Yeah. Well, no, they'd give honest answers to dishonest questions as well.
Oh, okay.
Right. So I was really impressed.
Yeah.
All right. And I had heavy-duty questions like, why? Who? What?
Yeah.
And often people would laugh when I would ask questions, and then Dr. Schaeffer would tell them off. At one point I was asking a question. This was very serious. Mm-hmm. And I asked, well, how do you know you know? All I meant was, how do you know that you've learned what you were studying? And then I discovered a question that I didn't even know existed. Right? Like, we can know, as in knowing, how can you know? How can you be certain of knowledge? Or
so you asked, how do you know that you know about the study, and they went directly to epistemology.
Absolutely. And I thought, it's like you suddenly discover some money, or you discovered something you didn't know existed. I thought, well, forget the other question. Tell me the answer to this one.
Wow. Yeah.
And I thought, this is good.
And it opened things up.
Yeah, it did. Especially the encouragement, because I would just listen. I wouldn't talk, because these guys were intellectuals, and I wasn't. And I know also from some of the military reports that were done back in the 40s, 50s. I didn't write the report, but before I was being born and afterwards, as a child, it's just because black folk were not capable of contemplative thought, totally incapable. And I would just say, goodness, I would have appreciated that knowledge before I got depressed. Yeah. Right. It would have been very helpful. Right? Then I wouldn't have had anything to worry about, would I? Yeah. All this work I had to do.
But your mind was opened up there, right? I mean, it
was. It was incredible. Yeah. To meet all kinds of folk. In Rookmacher, he just took to us, and so did Dr. and Mrs. Schaeffer, and Oz, and that's Oz Guinness and Jerem, and Vicky, and I could say I met Janet at their table. All right. People were doing a little matchmaking.
Yeah. Put you together. Now, describe...
Come on, you got enough, haven't you? All right, okay.
Well, I got one more question.
All right, go on.
You could just
chill. I'll do what you want.
Okay.
All right.
You're a good boy.
Well, calm down. All right. Just describe what that hospitality looked like as far as from Edith in particular. I mean, I know that she everybody always seems to bring up that she had this way that was almost kind of beyond expression. She's kind of the hidden secret of Labrie, kind of behind the scenes working. Not as out in front as Schaeffer was because of all the books and the films and things like that. What sort of contribution do you feel like Edith was making at that time?
I'm not sure I was consciously aware of all that. I mean, she just seemed like a mom, she's running the household. And we had various duties, to do. We'd study in the morning, we'd work in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. And on this occasion, I was assigned to work at the kitchen, and she'd given me something to do, some mixture to make, some cake. Mm-hmm. And I got all the instructions. I remembered the instructions. And so I stirred them all up together. Well, I think I mistimed the mixtures. Right, when she came back, mm-hmm. and it couldn't be done. But I just noticed that there was silence in the kitchen.
Okay.
I think, I think something's not quite right here. And I later learned that she was pretty tough, you see. But she was being very kind with me. She said, "Okay, we were supposed to make this, but I think we'll make something else with it now. What can we make with what you've done?" All right?
Yeah.
I don't remember being invited to work in the kitchen after that.
That's funny.
All right. And on one occasion we were doing something. Yes, because I didn't ask them for any money. I didn't want it. What do I want to ask them for money for? And we were going somewhere, or we had to do something. Or I was going down the mountain. It could have been with Larry and Nancy. Mm-hmm. And we were going down, and I'm taking Janet out. And she gave me some pocket money. She says, "You're going to need this." And I was thinking, what for? Mm-hmm. If everybody goes to buy this and they go do this, well, I haven't got the money. You just sit and look. You enjoy the scenery. It's beautiful mountains, a beautiful place, mm-hmm. beautiful girl.
Yeah.
It's Janet, wasn't it? You agree, don't you?
I agree.
Anyway, that was Mrs. Schaeffer. They were all very kind to me, really, seriously. And the kindness came first. And then I knew that I could trust what they said, or at least I suspected I'd be able to trust what they said because of how they lived. Yeah, that was the most impressive bit. Yeah, it was quite consistent. Even Rookmacher, he'd visit, from Dutch Labrie. And what did he do? Janet and I were supposed to have a little meeting with him. So we said we broke up. And he's saying, "How can you break up?" He says, "You're not together yet." All right? Oh. He talked so well with her. She went to sleep, and we talked into the night. And every time he came to England, most of the time he came to England after that, he'd come and see us. I was a poor wannabe on the other side, not an artist with some kind of reputation. But how that happened, I have no idea. If I can't trust you, I can't trust, the way you live, the way you are, which was often the way it was like, I'd been in Moody, I'd been in the other Bible groups or Bible places, and I heard the talk, and that's one of the things that makes me so, all right, maybe we won't go there, but at the moment, they talked about being a Christian, but they lived in another way.
So, in closing here, could you tell us just a little bit about your work and what you've done so far?
And you're going to ask me in just a little bit to tell you about my work?
Just about 30 seconds. No, give me an hour. No. But tell me a little bit about things that got you started after Labrie, and then also what the future looks like.
Yeah. Well, we were never blessed like Tavia, all right? From Fiddler on the Roof. I'm thinking, Lord, when to be a rich man, would it destroy some vast eternal plan? But that never happened. On the other hand, I think it was really good to learn to have struggled with the other artists, because it was like a renaissance. It was happening in Britain as far as photographers are concerned. Anybody came through there, the Cartier-Bressons, the other people, the world, the Eugene Smiths, these guys. And we get to know them, like the Tony Ray Jones. These were, the secular guys as far as this stuff is concerned. But there was this kind of renaissance as far as the Christian artists were concerned, and the Art Center group with Nigel Goodwood and all these guys, Steve Turner. And some of us made it, some of us didn't. For me, it was just, I don't know what it was. Janet worked and I didn't. I was pretending to be an artist. It wasn't for a lack of trying, because we were working. But what came out of all that was, it was just phenomenal. You're hanging around with the greatest photographers in the world, living photographers in the world. These are your friends and people you know, and providentially, how it happened. And you think, how did I get here among these people? Who am I? Where did all this come from? And then you were meeting the other artists and whatever. If I lived here, because we were in London at that point, not knowing it, the work was growing, and I was becoming stronger as a photographer. Still didn't have any money. And then the Victoria and Albert Museum bought my stuff, and I'm first of the contemporary lot. With Valerie Wilmer. And I think the present curator doesn't like it, but it's tough. It's in there, right?
Yeah.
Tough. You can't take it out. It belongs to the nation. It belongs to Britain. And it was stuff from here, from America, from my hometown, from whatever. And we did many things. I never intended to be an artist. I didn't want to. I just wanted to be a photographer, to work. But then after you hang out with the likes of, somebody like Cartier-Bresson spending time with you, and then you had the Tony Ray Jones who died early, with kind of leukemia. What can you do, right? It's just he who walks with wise men becomes wise. So I accidentally got to be pretty good. Well, it wasn't accidental. And now I'm showing things that I'm just taking 40 years to be able to do. Right? But it was learning from the Dutch 17th century artists. Spent a lot of time with those work. Even little things. Like we were out in the country, and there was this set of, at that time, they were really expensive. It was only $150. But at that time, that was a lot of money for us. There was a set of 6 gold leaf books of Rembrandt drawings, all of his drawings complete. And I went in the store and I'm looking at this, and we had maybe $10 to whatever. And I was going to try and do an American style, do a down payment, because this is in a village in England, or a small town in England. She says, take them home. We didn't sign a contract, she didn't know where I lived, anything. They just expect me to bring the money, and I just brought it in, every month until we paid it off. Just like that. But I still have those books. It was such an influence. And now I make these kind of photographs. But, it came from the preaching and teaching and the things we heard about who we are. And, even the very stuff of growing up black in this country, in America, where you're now thinking, who am I? Where do I come from? What does it mean to be made in the image of God? I almost became obsessed with trying to find the answer to that. But I wanted to see it visually, and it should be so wherever we look. And I'll tell you 2 things of that, and then I'll stop, all right? Because this is too much work for you. No. All right? What happened was that I just wanted to see it. I wanted to understand it visually. Because if God can, speak to these people in science and talk about the universe, I should be able to look and see. And, you're asking that question about every nationality, all the people you see. There's a couple of photographs from a wedding. And there's one where they're sitting on the bench and you just have this multiple relationships and all intertwined, all together. And it just looks normal, because that's what's happening all the time. And I used to argue with Rookmacher about that. Another was the Chinese one, because I'd always photographed for grandmother. I knew the art critics were there, because by now, they were talking about my work, and everybody was talking about my work. So, that's all right, but why don't you throw money once in a while, right? But no. But anyway, there was a Chinese, because there's Chinese girls that were living with us, and the folk had come, the grandmother, the grandfather, the cousins, whatever, these kids had come. They were all Chinese, and I think, goodness, well, this is the furthest I've ever seen. Here's a culture I didn't know at all. So if I photograph them, and the theology's right? Because I'm not interested in line and form and whatever. The technique only follows what we're after. I said, if that's really right, I should be able to photograph these folk. And when they take the photograph home, the Chinese relatives and cousins should be able to look at the photograph and say, boy, that really looks like you. That looks like uncle whoever or cousin whoever. And it should really feel like it. Because I'd had an experience like that in England, and the foreigner came in and saw the stuff. And he says, oh boy, they look like they could walk right off there. Like that. Yeah. And people said, that's my son, that's him. And they're talking about them, not about me. The greatest difficulty is because we've learned to look past that very glory of God, like who we really are. Because we're really made in the image of God. And if I was really good as a photographer, trying to capture them, theoretically, I could have an exhibition and the photographs are hanging there. But you couldn't go in because it reflected the Shekinah so strongly, right? That you just couldn't go in, right?
That's deep.
But as it is, I'm a fallible man making fallible photographs of wrecked images of the Creator. And He's made it so. But we see each other, and we have learned not to see each other. We have learned to look past them. There's nothing in this universe that bears the mark of God the way we do as human beings. I thought, that's it, really. And that's really what I want. And so when grandmother looks at my photographs, she should be able to, without consciously using that vocabulary, be able to see, and she sees that person so strongly that it just feels like that. She doesn't think Sylvester, she's thinking John, or whoever. All right?
Yeah. Very good. Thank you so much for taking the time and
Thank you.
speaking with
All
me.
right. All right. Thank you, guys.
All right.
All right.